As a reminder, this is the exclusive career podcast. And I also have the exclusive career coach podcast. Last week, I talked about biggest resume missteps. I talked about what I'm seeing repeatedly on the resumes that come to me, what those solutions are. So, recommendations if you are DIYing your resume. I saw an article from Inc.com about how not to motivate employees, and it got me thinking about these kind of phrases and terms that they said you should never say. So I wanted to share that content and put my spin on it with my recommendations and my thoughts. The essence of the article is that we as leaders sometimes say things to our team that have the opposite effect that we're intending. So either we're trying to motivate them, and what we are in essence doing is demotivating them, or in some cases, we just make a random comment that has a very demotivating effect on people, totally without our awareness. So hopefully, I can bring some awareness to you through this episode. I broke these 13 items down into three categories. I called them team dynamic saboteurs, feedback fails, and leadership derailers. So the first one we're going to do is the team dynamic saboteurs. And number one is making comparisons. Whether you're trying to motivate somebody to improve on your team or, heaven forbid, actually trying to shame them, comparing employee A to employee B is never a good idea. And I can confess, I actually did this way back in the day. Someone who wasn't proceeding with a project in my timeline. And I actually set out to kind of thinking, if I bring it up and he can say, hey, I haven't done anything with that, and everybody else in the team has made progress, that will motivate him to get done. It is not true. It will demotivate them. And the reverse is also true. If you tell employee A, hey, you're doing so much better at whatever it is than employee B, it's going to get back to employee B and be very demotivating to that employee. So don't make comparisons. Number two, bashing others. And I want you to paint this one with a very broad brushstroke, whether it's your boss, your peers, anybody who's not in the room at the time. They're going to assume that if you're bashing these other people when they're in the room, that you will bash them when they aren't in the room. And this definitely includes your predecessor. So even if your predecessor was factually ineffective in their job, you don't bash them. Now, this is far different from telling the truth with respect. So something factual about someone to, I don't know, explain something that you're doing or why something is working the way it is, but you tell that truth with respect. And in most all likelihood, you're not going to tell the entire truth. So don't bash others. Number three, telling your team to only bring solutions to you. Now, be very careful here because you do want solutions, but you also want problem surfaced. So you want people who have great solutions to bring problems to you with a proposed solution, even if it's, loosely fleshed out, maybe it's very well fleshed out and it's not the right fit for whatever. But you don't want them to only bring problems to you that they have solutions for, because then this may cause them to not bring up problems because they don't have a solution, or they don't maybe have the bandwidth to think about a solution. And so they don't bring the problem to you. So you don't want them to only bring solutions to you. Bring the problems. Number four, you do not want to tell them that you will do it yourself. This is such a demotivator because it really signals you as a control freak that doesn't trust your team and that you don't care about them enough to help them learn and grow. And this also really shows that you have a lack of strategic mentality. You're not willing to sacrifice a bit of time in the short term in order to give them the competence and confidence that they need that will ultimately save you time in the long term. So telling them that you will do it yourself is a huge team dynamic saboteur. The next section is feedback fails. So the first one here is telling an employee you don't have feedback for them. And this is tricky, right? Because sometimes this is going to happen on a moment's notice, but you should always be able to coach and give some kind of feedback at a fairly specific level. Sometimes that has to come from you asking probing questions. So maybe someone kind of blindsides you in the hallway. What do you think about my project, my presentation? What questions specifically do you have about it? And let me see what I can, assuming you were in the room, right? And in some cases, it may be, hey, I wasn't in the room at the time. I haven't heard anything one way or the other. Let me get back. Are there some specific areas that you really wanted feedback in? So when you tell an employee you don't have feedback for them and just shut it down, you really are showing that lack of caring about them and lack of interest in their development. So don't tell an employee you don't have feedback for them. Next, not being direct with feedback. So in this scenario, you have feedback for them, but you're holding back. You're not being truthful. You're saying things like, don't take this the wrong way, or I don't want to hurt your feelings, but this is going to lessen the effectiveness of your feedback, assuming that you are able to give it to them in a way that is useful and helpful. And it can also indicate that you haven't taken the time or have the skill set to provide helpful feedback to them. So always be direct with your feedback. The next feedback fail is questioning their process with an accusation. Accusations are going to create defensiveness and really shut down any kind of growth. So things like, why did you do it that way? Instead of something like, how might you do it differently next time? How might you have done things better this time? Those are going to be growth minded questions that will create collaboration and hopefully growth. And if you need a minute to get in the right mindset, just be careful that you don't, sort of bark back at someone with that. If you can possibly hold your tongue, get yourself in the right mindset so that you can come to the conversation with a growth mindset. So don't question their process with an accusation. Next, conveying your disappointment in them as human beings. We know this is wrong, correct? But sometimes we do it. You want to make sure that you focus any negative feedback, any criticism in their performance. And one of my big pet peeves is always those generic, I don't have an example for you. It's very generic, negative feedback, and I don't know what to do with it, right? Like there's these compartments in my brain and I don't know where to put that. And so because I don't know where to put that, I start to like stick it into all kinds of different areas of my brain. Does she mean here? And it causes a lot of uncertainty and sort of second guessing on the employee's part. So specific examples aim toward improvement. So don't convey your disappointment in them. And finally, in this category of feedback fails, non-specific praise. So the flip side is when you give them praise, you want that to be specific as well. We know if we have children, right? You're not supposed to say good boy or, you're such a good girl, but like I really like the way you put your crayons away, right? Same thing with your employees. Rather than good job, I really like the way you handled that potential delay with purchasing by blah blah blah, whatever the person did. That is really going to cement that behavior, right? I was rewarded for that behavior. My boss really liked the way I did that. I feel really good about that. I want to do that again. And the final category is leadership derailers. So these are things that will really have your people questioning your leadership. And the first one is not giving a reason for your decisions. If I don't know why I'm asked to do what I'm doing, it's going to be a major demotivator. I'm going to really, and I personally will push back just on premise, right? I want a reason. I want to understand the reason, and I want to, whether I agree with it or not, I want to understand the reason. And so I think if you can't give them a reason for a decision, you really want to question yourself. Is it because there is no justifiable reason? Or is it because you have a reason, but maybe it's self-serving? or it is a reason that, for whatever reason, you don't want your team to know what your reason is. Really, that's one where you really want to look inward and see what's going on for me that I don't want to give them a reason for my decision. Next, you are avoiding accountability. We know this is a huge one, but we still do it. Passing the buck, right? Oh, it's not my problem. I didn't do it. She was in charge of that project. There's two problems, at least, with this. First of all, you're demonstrating that pass the buck mentality to your team. So they're not going to have confidence and they're not going to feel loyal to you because you're essentially throwing someone under the bus. And whether it is one of your team members or someone external, they can make the assumption that they might be the next one that you throw under the bus. Secondly, avoiding accountability. If the problem is with your team, you're the leader of that team. So it actually is your problem, in addition to whomever, and you have that conversation privately. But it's always your problem if you're the leader of that team. So don't avoid accountability. Next, being too busy to talk pretty much all the time. We all have our moments. Hey, I'm on my way to this meeting. I've got to be there in 30 seconds, or I'm actually running late. But here's what happens when that happens over and over again. You're not telegraphing that you're super important and essential to the group and to the company. You are telegraphing either that you're not a good time manager, you don't delegate effectively, and or you don't care enough about your team to develop them. So again, it doesn't mean that you have to drop everything on a moment's notice, but you want to provide an explanation. Again, I'm on my way to this meeting. Hey, I've got to go pick my kids up at school. Let's set up a time to talk. And so whether you do that on the moment or you say, hey, check out with my secretary, have her set something up as soon as possible, tell her I said this was a priority. Something like that, where you're not just saying, hey, later. You're not pushing them off. So while we all have moments where we are genuinely too busy to talk in the moment, we want to make sure that we make allowances for that, and that we don't do that all the time. And then finally, I called this one saying the quiet thing out loud. So these are things like asking a team member if they are questioning your authority, actually saying that. Are you accusing me of showing favoritism? Are you accusing me of lying? Do you think I'm lying? You get the idea. You are showing insecurity and inability to handle conflict, and it is a huge derailer for your leadership. You want to be someone who welcomes questions, welcomes feedback and pushback, as long as it is done professionally. Totally within your right to call one of your people out for being rude and unprofessional and how they approach you with something. But when you respond with, are you accusing me of, it derails and demotivates, or derails your leadership and demotivates your people. So I hope this has given you, maybe, I'm hoping that for at least some of you, there was an ooh in here somewhere. I certainly had a few where I was like, I've done that in the past. I've most assuredly been guilty of more than one of these. And hopefully you can set up some strategies to create awareness around that for yourself and to address the problem. And I will see you next week back over on the exclusive Career Coach podcast. Take care